All right, so it looks like things are working just okay. Oh, that's gonna be a problem. There we go. Uh, Started the stream a little bit early, just by a couple minutes, so I can get myself settled and do a couple quick checks on things. Things seem to be going okay so far. If you were watching this now or in the near future, you may notice immediately that it's just me, and because I don't have any streaming software yet, this means that I will, in fact, be using just the YouTube service like I did last time. This has convinced me that I need to get more independent technology wise for the stream. So if this happens again in the near future, which it might do, I will be getting myself set up with some streaming software that is like real grade stuff, not the stuff I've been trying to kind of almost used in the past. Um, if you saw the previous pre-show, it was me faffing off for a couple minutes with my mouth while I went around and did some stuff. So that is exactly what we're doing right now. I will still be taking questions via Discord for the people who know how to get to that. There's a link in my announcement from our Facebook group on how to do that. I believe um, Squid has managed this account in such a fashion that the actual Discord information is available on YouTube in some fashion. Although I'm going to focus in on stuff right a little bit just to kind of keep things going. And I think that we are good to go at this point. Let me just go ahead and pull up. Oh, nope, that's not how you do that at all. Okay. I notice I have an early viewer on here. Would you mind doing me a quick favor if you can hear me? Just put a little thing in the comment section saying that my sound is okay. Because if it's not, I have no way of checking without Squid, unfortunately. Um, so if you could just tap a little note in real quick, I'd appreciate it. Oh, sorry, I have to go take care of something very quickly. I'm still on here, obviously, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to hear me. But you can appreciate my professionalism as I go into the other room in the middle of a live stream. Okay. I believe in the industry that's called authenticity. Um, but I am not really the most professional person. Um, if you're catching the stream today, now, future, whatever, you're also going to notice that my shirt that I'm wearing is one of my favorite shirts, but it's also incredibly terrible for camera, which we'll get to later. So, anyways, it's now 6 o'clock, so I will attempt a live version of the usual greeting without practicing it, which is welcome to Lorem Ipsum Live. It's coming to you live from the always sunny, always warm Upper Midwest. I am the real Logus, also known as just Logus, as many of you, many people out in the wild throngs know. And today, Squidicide is not present. He has had some stuff come up and is a little busy. Spring is a busy time of the year for I think for a lot of people, so I'm not too going to worry about it too much. But as I mentioned earlier on the pre-stream a couple minutes ago, this will be my last time streaming solo without a proper streaming service or streaming software being used. So don't worry. At this point, my only hope is that because I was incapable of doing an actual sound check before going live, before the actual show starting, that none of this is going to be too garbled. And unfortunately, I didn't do my usual prep work because I was busy reading. So I'm going to be a little shushy today, and I apologize for that ahead of time. But unlike the last solo stream, I have a lot of stuff to cover, and there's a lot of information. So we're going to get right into it before things get a little too cray-cray. So today's topic. Oh wait. Oh yeah. Weekly update. That's why a lot of you show up here, is to see what's going on all week long. So my week update is that I have been continuing doing the same stuff usually, preparing for packing, little projects around the house. Well, not preparing to pack, packing and preparing, getting some financial stuff settled out, working with the IRS to get COVID relief things worked out, because apparently there was an issue. And anyway, also, I didn't mention this previously on the streams, but for the last couple weeks now, I've been not chewing my nails anymore. I'm giving up that bad habit. So you can probably kind of see on the camera. It's kind of hard, and my camera won't refocus because it's set to auto on me right now, given the service I have. But let's pull it back a little bit. I have, at this point, successfully have 2 fingers that look like they've never been chewed on. The rest of them still have relics of a much more toothy me, but not these ones. These ones have not been chewed on. This guy got a little bit of chewing on accident. I was late at night, not paying attention. So this is going really well. This is one of my many projects I'm constantly undergoing to improve myself, and I think that's been really important. That's one of the reasons why we're doing the stream. Is that I'm trying to, at this point in my life now that I've decided that things are going to go well, if I just keep trying and working hard again, and I have some light at the end of my tunnels. I've started last year in August. I started a series of self-improvements. Well, before then too, but like for real deals, like permanent self-improvements, starting last August. So like every month or so, I start a new thing that I do wrong that I need to fix, and I've been doing that more or less for the last couple of, call it 6 years, trying to just be a better person, because anybody who knew me back in college probably remembers me as that asshole, and people who met me in the army probably remembers me as that nerdy asshole, and people who met me slightly after that probably remembers me as that anxiety-ridden asshole. So now I just want to be that guy who's still a bit of an asshole, but it's all fine because we're working on stuff together. So we're gonna work together in a team. So I become the team's asshole, which as a sentence could probably use some work. Other than that, did the final work on a chest for my spouse's trade chest with for going to events, putting stuff in the chest that is then carried around the country to be traded to other people for other knick-knacky stuff. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I'm not really doing much of anything with my life. I'm working on trying to figure out how much fur I can keep here on my lower lip space, which you've all undoubtedly noticed that I have, and have been at least as disgusted by it as many of my exes. That there's this little bit of stuff right here, and I like having there because without it, you're not going to believe this, but I look even fatter in the face with it. Oh yeah, fatter. That's another thing. I'll remember that. Come back to that. But anyways, but the machine I use now when I sleep has a seal here on the bottom lip, and this hair thing. So I've thinned it out a bit. And since Squid isn't here, I can be really overly detailed with you people. But anyway, so there's that. But also, you may have noticed that this line right here, where my actual face is, and then the other part of it, which shouldn't even be there, that's starting to kind of pull in more around here on the sides. And well, I've started my face workout routines again last couple weeks, and I'm not every day. I should, but I don't. But getting those face muscles back into operation. For those people who live with me or deal with me on a regular basis, they're going to love to know that this means that I can talk for even longer periods of time without fatigue, which is exactly what they've all been clamoring for. Quickly checking the Discord where people have been saying stuff. All right, so that is fine. We're good there. Oh no. Oh, my computer's doing stuff. I'll get this all figured out. Technology and I have separated ways a bit. I'm catching up. It's taking time. I apologize to people on stream. So, anyways, the real deal, the real stuff. It's been 7 minutes. I've wasted your time. So let's go ahead and get to the actual things that you're here to talk about. So the COVID-19 second relief payment went out in February, in the first week or two, depending on who you is. And that was for the $600 per person, 12 for couples, et cetera, et cetera. And there was stipulations and blah, blah, blah attached to that. Now, if you're remembering, this was a COVID relief package that was being debated and discussed as an actual bill with bits and pieces starting in September. I want to say like the 13th or something like that was when I first heard about it. So really, this is the end of summer. Hey, it's been like 3 months and the country's really hurting. Let's get another relief package in before it's too late, because we're the only, developed country on the planet that isn't actually taking care of our people. So, hey, while we can try to help unemployment a bit, well, they extended the guidelines a bit for unemployment. That was nice, but so the September became, well, we'll wait till after the election. After the election was, well, we're going to have an insurrection. And after the insurrection, I was like, well, now it's Obama's problem. Well, sorry, not Obama. Oh my gosh, that would be weird. It's Biden's problem. And now that President Biden is president, and everyone knows that, and he's sitting in there doing the thing. Of course, it is that it's too much money. We've been given too much money, too many people over the last year. We know it's been a whole year of really bad stuff, but really it's just too much, and thousands of people dying every day to a disease that we could have prevented a year ago from being nearly a problem. Now it's too much to ask to give people some more aid. And so we've been fighting that. Thankfully, the American voters have come together and decided that the Republicans might not actually be worth having in office. And so collectively, we kept a small majority in the House and an almost even duck in the Senate. So here we are. It's March 9th. It's a Tuesday. And tomorrow they're actually putting the vote, supposedly, in the House to actually finalize the deal before sending off to the desk to get signed by the president. And so a lot of people have been wondering for the past 9 months, 6 months for this particular month, but for this particular bill. So for the last 6 months, people have wondering what's actually going to be in it, what's it doing, and how much are the Democrats going to screw themselves, how much are the Republicans going to help them screw themselves, and how much are the Republicans going to reveal that they literally just think you should just die. So we found out that with the Senate vote, that the Democrats are willing to totally screw over people who are hurting only a little bit. That's fine. We're gonna keep screwing them. And the Republicans were still, not a single vote in the Senate to actually passing the bill. I'm not gonna go over the whole bill, and I'm gonna get into that exactly for a reason why. But I'm gonna go over some highlights I think are very important before we actually talk about why we're even talking about this thing now, and how in the U.S. we ended up in a situation where we have to have this discussion. I read a couple articles over the last week or two. Today I read a bunch of them, but essentially a lot of stuff I'm seeing from conservative sources or regressive sources. Oh yeah. Oh, back to weekly updates. At the end of last stream, in the end of stream discussion, I actually came across a change of mind. I've always been saying that democracy, republics, debate is required to create a conversation, and the role of a progressive group or party is to constantly suggest and look for solutions to what they perceive as being problems with the way things are currently set up. They're the people sitting there rocking the boat, trying to change its direction. Moderates are there to lend credence one way or the other to either change or not change. Conservatives are supposed to resist change and offer counterpoints to suggestions by the progressives. So it's supposed to be progressives convincing moderates and conservatives of the value of a progressive issue, and conservatives showing where the weaknesses of changes or the dangers of changes are, and helping to moderate, helping to they're keeping that handbrake on the steering wheel or steering bar handlebars of society. I agree with part of, for example, I agree with part of what Bill Clinton and his administration said, which was that as much as they would have liked to do more for queer rights back in the early 90s, if you look back at the culture, like I a couple years ago, I rewatched the first season of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and the culture really wasn't ready for it because of the way we were actively working, where a third of us were actively regressing away from uh, liberalism, and an active third of us were actually pushing away from America itself. So it's very difficult to get a cohesive um, understanding of policies that could actually make the appropriate changes for queer rights. So I agree with the idea that perhaps timing is extremely important. I disagree with the idea that you shouldn't fucking try at all then. And the 2012 removal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell was one of the best things that's ever happened to the military. And you don't have to take my word for it. The military says that strategically, tactically, organizationally, diversity is the number one tool of the military, and that every time the military is diversified, it has improved dramatically. So that's the end of that example. I'm not going to continue further on that. I'm going to have some self-restraint this time. But going back to the original discussion that got us to that particular tangent, I did there is I lost it because I wasn't keeping a finger on it. And you guys that are watching aren't writing comments. They're making fun of me or anything, so I have no idea where I've lost my spot. But COVID really. Oh yeah. So last week I made the discovery that I don't actually think that we need a Republican Party anymore, because if anything, the COVID relief package has been the number one issue I think that highlights more than anything the complete uselessness of the GOP as a party, as an entity, as a association of individuals. The Democrats are themselves fulfilling both necessary roles of public discourse. They are both the push and the resist. And the GOP has moved entirely away from resist and entirely into regress. They want to move society backwards. And I want to make it very clear that I'm not a blindsided progressive on these things. You can ask some of my more progressive friends. I am annoyingly moderate on a number of issues, or I am frustratingly non-activist on a number of issues in my personal life and personal politics. I'm going to readjust my stance here a bit. And the point of me stating that is that when I say something is regressive, I'm not saying that it is something that is so conservative to me that it feels like it's just undoing something we've done. When I say aggressive, I mean something that ignores an essential part of what we as human beings have come to understand as being part of humanity. So these private prisons, where we now have private prisons that have contracts with local governments that state that local governments, for certain crimes in a bracket of crimes, will put X number of prisoners into those private prisons for at least a collective X number of days, which is how the contracts are so low on the government end of when they actually give them the money to be running the prison. Now, that being said, that means that the private prisons have guaranteed that some people who wouldn't be otherwise, and this has actually been shown by a number of studies, that a number of people would not end up in prison because their stuff can be handled by fines, but because the local governments, the state governments have to maintain a certain level of incarceration in order to maintain these low cost private prison populations, private prison contracts. They have to keep the incarceration rate up, and which has actually dramatically increased not only the number of incarcerated individuals, but also the length of sentences for incarcerated individuals, where you're seeing more maximum sentences, more extended sentences, more denied uh, oh my gosh, what is the name of that thing where you're allowed to leave prison if you're good and stuff? Well, you all know what I mean. People who would parole, people who, and more denied paroles. So, uh, or short sentences for good behavior, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, based on statutes. And then the reason why the private prisons like to maintain this, and actually also some state prisons are doing the same thing, maintaining high incarceration rates, is that our capitalist society has discovered a really, 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 really convenient and easy way to not only keep, for racist reasons and cultural reasons, of keeping people of color disadvantaged, so that certain populations of people, largely white people, but mostly just rich people, can keep in power by keeping people down. But I've also found a really convenient and easy way to not only bring back slavery as a thing, but also to use that slavery to make more money than you could possibly imagine, by outcompeting private industry for a number of things, as well as using them for dangerous labor that is actually against the law to use people for in the particular fashion they're being used. So, um, that kind of behavior, that's not conservative. That's regressive. That's going back to a time where 100 years ago, yeah, more than 100 years ago, 100 and oh gosh, 130 years ago. 130 years ago, we as a society joined the rest of the world in Europe in deciding that just because somebody is a different skin color doesn't mean that they should be a slave. And in general, nobody should be a slave, because slavery is bad. Because any one person being enslaved degrades the human nature and the dignity of every human, because every human then becomes a potential slave. Um, and failing to exercise, understand, or acknowledge that is a regression, because we've known this now for literally 3 centuries, as being a widely understood concept. It just took about 80 years for most of the world to decide to actually go with it, and then another almost 100 years for the US to follow the rest of the world into actually believing that. Parentheses, asterisk, I'm very familiar with the slave trade. I know that it continued for a long time, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My study into green history focused very heavily on the New World, in particular, colonial Latin America. So if I skipped over some details, it's because if I go into that, it's never going to stop. And then the people I have currently in stream will simply just leave, unless you're really that into Latin American colonial history. Anyway, continuing on. So since we no longer have conservative Republicans, we've got conservative Democrats and normal Democrats, and some progressive, some just moderates. We no longer need the GOP at all. They can just get erased. So all my previous comments to that claim in previous streams, or if you've met me in person or seen me discussions online somewhere, That's a big change I have now. And the COVID relief bill was a massive example of that issue, where it is clear that the Democrats by themselves can handle business. And the downside of this also means that we will have to, people like me who are not Democrats, are never going to be Democrats, have no interest in the way the Democrats do business or the way that the rules are written so that there is Democrats. People like me, there's a lot of us, we can no longer I don't think we can really count on the idea of just voting blue because it's not red. For a number of reasons, like I said, the Democrats are doing it themselves, but also a lot of those people that left the Republican Party, not a plurality, but a lot, um, did go for their relatively conservative local Democrats, because they voted for them and they're delivering. So if they voted for in this election out of disinterest in the president and what the GOP is doing, and now that's actually still getting with them what they want, then they have no reason not to vote again in 2 years, and in 4, and in 6, and in 8. And those people are going to tell their friends who left the party after the January 6th insurrection, hey, going blue doesn't hurt. You just vote for the really conservative blue guy, and it keeps the other blue guy off his spot. See, that's the ticket. If progressives take the Republican spot in the GOP, and the conservatives take all the Democratic spots, like this is the way it kind of used to be in the South, for a lot of states, where both candidates were actually conservative. It's just a matter of who they caucus with on more economic issues rather than social society issues. Economics wise, both parties are largely the same, on the moderate conservative side. So you're not getting any real difference there. So we're going to see, I think we're going to see a lot more Democrats getting elected. And the only reason why this doesn't make a difference is that we're going to see a lot more Joe Manchins out there, where the Democratic Party, so-called, is going to see itself debating with itself, in caucuses or in the various committees, for a lot longer. We're going to spend a lot more time dealing with that internally. There's upsides and downsides to that. I'm going to focus on the downside of that. A lot of Americans do not actually know who they're voting for. And I will raise my hand and say that I voted for a person I've never even heard speak before, just a couple weeks ago for a primary in my home state. A lot of candidates, no idea who any of them were. It's an important position in the government. Don't get me wrong, I should know more. And I put probably half an hour of research, which is more than most people are going to do. So people do this even for, the Senate or in the House, and for president. They just see an R or a D and think, whatever, that's good enough for me. So I think that's going to be a problem going forward in the future, where a lot of Ds are going to be, I think they're actually still called blue dogs, but I think we need to change it. That's a little too old folky for me. We need to come up with some new word for the conservative Democrats who just take the place of Republicans. What's halfway between a donkey and an elephant? I think hippo's already taken, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, we'll come back to all that later. So what's actually going on with the bill? So the bill itself is $1.9 trillion of money that is divided up between individual payouts to individual Americans. Hello, Ravensburn. I see you there. It's good to see you back. I've been missing your commentary and questions, to be honest. It's good to see people coming back. So $1.9 trillion, personal individual payments, and funding for government programs, funding for individual governments, funding for creating funding sources for various projects that need to be actually finished being created in the future, and a few other projects in there in the mix, which is that's literally every bill ever. I'm going to say up front something that's going to make some people not. Oh, hey, there's Beardamus, also saying hi. The Yeah, I'm gonna say something right up front that's made some of my people I talk to personally a little uncomfortable. I'm okay with the bill. I'm actually pretty happy with the bill. I think in context, the bill is a good thing. I'm gonna say that up front, so that if you're checking up on stuff and you're looking at me now and you're thinking, "Oh, I wonder if this guy is a shill for the Biden administration." No, I'm not a shill for the Biden administration, but you don't have to be okay with the bill. It's not what the bill I would write. The bill I would write would be crazy. It'd be straight up like 1940s style government where like there's all kinds of funding for jobs and schools and stuff that just makes absolutely everything taken care of. It'd be absolutely insane and just too good. Yeah, music maker who's here as well does point out that it could be way worse, and they're right. That's my point. Is that the bill could be the very. I don't think people remember the first actual relief bill because the news covered it for all of 8 seconds, then let it go. Which is the first bill was $2 trillion of money directly inject. Took them 35 minutes to pass the bill. They wrote the bill kinda. It was a napkin with the bill kind of just like breathed onto it. They put that on the floor. They voted for it. Instantly passed. It's $2 trillion injected directly into the stock market to cover a bunch of stocks and bonds and blah 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 financial nonsense, so that people wouldn't lose their shit and lose their retirements. What ended up immediately happening was that that $2 trillion was gone by the end of day. $2 trillion that went directly into the pockets of millionaires and billionaires. Not exaggeration at all. This is not some leftist. Oh, it essentially is a no, no. They took that money, they sold the stocks, they still ruined the economy. They took that money and put it directly into their bank accounts, into their pockets, and walked off with it. And a lot of that shit was tax free. That was the first stimulus bill. That's not the one we have now. In fact, we even have the first stimulus bill that we had after that. That one, the works parts of it were cleared out by the end of the week by big business again. That's a lot less possible with this bill. So, going over in a little more into detail, you got 22% of the bill, which is about $422 billion. That's what's paying that $1,400 per person. We're going to talk a little bit more in just a little bit about how that's been, ticked down a bit. Just so you know, like 80% of the United States of citizens are getting the full 1,400, even though there was cuts down. So I'm okay. 80% of Americans who aren't part of the people who get nothing directly, I should say, to make clear. 13% of the bill is going to funding the extension for unemployment funding for $400 a week, which was down a bit. Oh no, sorry, that did get down. They got down to 300 already, but instead of being 300, instead of being 400, they went to 300 and extended the thing. Later covered. We're good now. We can move on. 12% is being sent out to Cobra for laid off workers, ACA subsidies for 2 years, funding directly for testing and tracing, contact tracing, funding for airlines and contractors to prevent layoffs and freezing of wages through September, funding the disaster release fund for funeral expenses that helps pay for COVID-19 related funerals, Defense Production Act, buying masks, gloves, syringes, the little bags, all that shit goes into, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. economic injury disaster loan advance grants for up to $10,000 per business, with caveats added in to make it less accessible to big businesses. But their GOP added in an amendment that still makes it capable of actually going towards big business, just not nearly as much as it was before. 27% of the total bill, about $519 billion, is going to local governments and state governments to cover the loss of revenue from last year. That it has to be keyed into keeping things like law enforcement and schools and government offices running, so that they can actually pay the postal office, the sheriff's office, and the police officers and everything like that. Which is an indirect employment benefit for state and government state and local government workers, which is great. Sorry, I just quickly checking to see if after I said that, if all of a sudden I saw an ACAB or something, because I kind of expect it with my crowd, to be honest. So the reason why I bring up these percentages is that when you do all the math, it's about 85% of the total bill, give or take $1 here and there, is Beardamus confirms what I was thinking. 85% is direct COVID relief. It is going to things that are covering the expenses of COVID, expenditures created by COVID-19, and the whatever necessary measures that governments have been able to actually put into play. In my local state, not happening for reasons that, to be honest, confound my ability to understand ethics. That it's just isn't working. So, but anyway, there's still been massive expenditures from my local state, and they'll get money from this bill to fix some of that and get some things back on track. The reason I bring up the 85% number and the next number, which is that all in all, 99%, a little bit more actually than 99% of all the funds, the $1.9 trillion, is going to U.S. citizens, U.S. taxpayers. There are some stuff that's indirectly going to non-citizens, like the $519 billion that I mentioned earlier. Some that's going to fire departments. Now, those fire departments don't look at the people who live in the house that's on fire necessarily before they, decide to put the fire out or not. They don't care if they're here illegally or not. So tactically speaking, yes, it is conceivable that some of this money is going to go to illegal aliens. Senator Ted Cruz, who, as all of you know, is some sort of goblin. And he tried to get an amendment added to the already passed bill, which I didn't know you could even do right now. But anyway, after the bill already passed, he wanted to add an amendment that required that none of the funds could go to, none of the $1,400 checks could go to illegal aliens, which thankfully someone brought to the floor and pointed out that that's simply a claim that addresses a problem that does not exist. That's not happening. In order to receive this, you have to have a social security number. You have to have a tax number on file with the IRS, either because you've paid taxes or you've sent them individually your personal information. Now, there's still going to be holes in that process. Like, for instance, for some reason, my social security number in the last 6 months has been detached from my IRS filing. So I had to work with them to get that fixed before I file my taxes, which I should put up a little sign over here saying, do your taxes, because I have a month left and I need to do them. But now I'm glad I didn't try, because it wouldn't have worked. I would have had to gotten all kinds of crazy paperwork, but I'm gonna get that figured out tomorrow. But so some people don't actually have the information filed in. There are people who are indigent, they're homeless, they are transient, they work on cash on hand, under the table kind of money, but they're citizens. They're United States citizens. They still pay sales tax. They still pay all kinds of other taxes and pay all kinds of other fees and and whatnot. So they're they're still contributing to our society, and they're in general working. Even in high, that's the thing. Okay, we'll come back to in a second. I'll remember employment. Um, um, but so yeah, these people are those people might still get missed, but there actually is a system. I checked today. There actually is a system for every U.S. citizen who has a social security number and can in some fashion verify that to get their $1,400. Or even if you don't have your 1,400 now, you can get your $1,400 and the previous amounts as well. There's a back system. Having been a government employee, I can tell you the one great thing, parentheses, also sometimes a bad thing, about the U.S. government is that it will give you every cent it owes you and nothing more. And God help you if they overpaid you. I was overpaid during my deployment, and I found this out about 7 months after I got out of the service, and I received a notice in a letter saying, "Hey, we know you're poor because you work in childcare, but we're going to garnish your wages until we get the money you owe back because we somehow overpaid you." Um, had I been smart, I would have argued that because I had a whole thing going on with that. But anyways, there's a reason why there's a reason why they overpaid me, and I could have if I went back in time, I would argue that and actually fight it because going back, if I could and prove, and I provided paperwork I have now, I could actually have kept all that money they took from me. But at this point, convincing the federal government to look back, before the age of the long lost time of 2015 is going to be impossible. But anyway, so there's a way for these people to get that money even if they don't have those numbers available to the IRS or whatever. So people like Senator Cruz, and there's a lot of people out there, the QAnoners, talking about how many illegals get all this money. They're not getting it. That's just straight up not the case. But another thing I saw, and this is my favorite thing, was that only 9% of this $1.9 trillion is actually going to COVID relief. Um, the reason why I have all these other numbers I shared with you earlier is I tried my very hardest to figure out where they got 9% from. Because even if you just talk about the 22%, that's the checks. And even if you divide out all the perhaps illegal people that might live in the country, it still comes out to like 15%. That's if you're using the super conservative, there's hundreds of millions of illegals in this country. It's still a huge number over 9%. There's no mathematics under which this is only 9% of the bill going to Americans, and there's no fashion in which this is only 9% going towards COVID relief. So I saw 19%, which was somebody actually doing the nationally recognized census data of what percentage of Americans compared to what percentage of uh, of people living in America, Americans who are not citizens, illegal or otherwise, and then how many of them are actually going to be eligible if parentheses if they actually would be getting the payment, which they're not. And that does come out to about 19% of people living in the United States would then be getting stuff. Um, so there's a lot of misinformation that's going on about what is and what is not being paid for. I saw this really amazing infographic by Fox News. And I tried to find it a little bit ago, but the only place I could find it was inside somebody else's video, and I'm not going to clip out somebody else's video to take out the image. But they tried showing all the different pork parts of the bill, and it comes out to $600 million out of the 1.9 trillion that could conceivably be considered pork, not in COVID stuff. And I mean, if I just pull up my calculator just now, some sort of not professional here, see 1.9 and then trillion is what that's let's say 1 2 3 1 2 3 that's million, 1 2 3 that's billion, 1 2 3 is that wrong? 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's billion. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Of course, I do that wrong again. So, so when you do the math out, I was trying to figure out what percentage of this is possibly pork. It's, I mean, it was just a terribly small number. 0.003% of it. Now, ideally, politics would work in such a fashion where even 0.003% of a bill would be considered too much pork for a thing. People should be able to get together as leaders and go, oh, this is, a pandemic that's affecting our entire species, because we've mismanaged it so poorly, especially in this country, parentheses, also Russia and Brazil, South Africa, UK. Because of that, it's not going to be a feature of our species that this disease exists, and we're going to get regular vaccinations for it throughout all of probably the next century just to get rid of it. We should be able to come together at those times, like we did in World War II, like we did in, like, I'm not gonna say World War One. World War One was trash, but in World War II, the capitalist democracies of the world got together with Russia and stopped a vast fascist movement that threatened to swallow up gigantic percentages of the human species and its resources and doom our planet to forever destruction of itself. We pulled all the stops for that. People still made money. I mean, there were so many people tried for profiteering from World War II. It was nuts. Howard Hughes got called in for profiteering accusations. And he was one of the people that he made a ton of money, but he also just like built a ton of stuff on cost for the US government. He designed things for our country that kept us competitive that other countries had to steal ideas from in order to stay relevant in the war in the late months of the war, late years of the war. So, anyways, my point is that we can come together, and people can still make money without necessarily resorting to putting things in bills that have nothing to do with it. Now, there's a tactic to that. A lot of people do this for like every time that they want to make a bill that makes it easier, more affordable to get women's health care. The GOP tax on some conservative Democrat tax on a an amendment that makes it so that you have to include abstinence-only education in all the schools for everyone living west of the Mississippi, and then immediately becomes a thing that you can't vote on. So that's a tactic. That's not quite what's being done here, but I'm going to say that 0.003% of 1.9 trillion, although it was a lot of money, it's $600 million. We have that lying around, just chilling. And if that's what it costs, if we have to fund a project to help preserve Native American languages, which I'm generally for anyways, in order to get people some money 6 months late to for this pandemic, I'm for it. I think that's fine. Yeah, $600 million in USD is nothing. I think it's a lot. That's more money than I'm likely to have collected, used, spent, be worth in my entire lifetime if I lived for another 100 years. I won't even get close to that. But I'm also only one of hundreds of millions of people. $600 million, by the way, is about the approximate cost of the entire weapons loadout for a weapon I was trained to use in the military, and we have hundreds of those just lying around. It was like 520 million was the total cost of all the equipment necessary to make that run, and it was for a weapon system to do one thing once, and then there was after that it's like another like $10 million annual to keep it running. But anyway, So $600 million is for a country of over 300 million people, with more money than has ever been collected on the planet, by one government before ever. And that's fine. We can fight for who actually ends up paying for that in the future later. But for now, keeping people off the street, keeping kids off the street. Oh yeah, also, this even watered down version of the bill is supposedly going to help pull something like, they said anywhere between 30 and 42%. Will reduce child poverty by 30 to 42%, and that combined with the next big thing they're going to be fighting for, which is the $15 minimum wage. Uh, that that will reduce child poverty in the country somewhere between 50 and 80%, depending on region, which I'm not certain what goes through the mind of a person who is in charge of the budget. When they see that there is a percentage of kids that live in poverty, and they go, okay, that's fine with me, I guess. Those kids deserve it. Um, I worked childcare for about half a decade, and I spent a long time studying child parenting, home ec kind of stuff. I spent a lot of time studying how to be a dad, because that was one of my plans for my life. And everything I've ever learned, everything I've ever seen in childcare, I can think of maybe like one kid who I'd be like, fuck that kid. I mean, give him food, give him a house, but like, uh, I'd be okay if that kid has to, like, do push-ups or something for it, because, I mean, he was awful. But even then, I'd only be doing that as a joke, like I am now. I don't think any kid is responsible for, one, how they are as a person, or, well, asterisk. Some kids know exactly what they're doing and they're okay with it. Now, the reason they're okay with it is largely, asterisk, uh, almost entirely how they're being raised or not raised by their parents and the people around them in their society. But I can't imagine why our government needs to sit around and go, well, we're only going to reduce child poverty by 30% because the other 70% are in some fashion undeserving of what the other 30% have. And this is child poverty. This isn't even like all children. The idea that people can take any one person's kids and decide that something that kid is or does or has makes them more deserving of an actual life than some other kid, is something I simply don't have the ethical bridging equipment to fully understand how you can do that by looking at kids. And I focus on kids a lot because they are the future of our species, which I'm very fond of, our species in general. But also, everything that we work for in life is to prepare the next thing, the next generation, the next step of our world. And the people doing that are going to be the kids. And so by punching kids in the face financially, socially, economically, physically, often, sadly, all we're doing is screwing over everything we've ever done before. Mozart, Einstein, you know, Andy Warhol, all these people, all these great things, all these interesting things, all these informative things that they've all done collectively, the stuff that we can remember that they did. Every time that we endanger or inhibit our own future as a species, what we're doing is taking a very small chunk away from what we've done. I don't personally have a reason why I can think of why we should let the effort of our lives as individuals or as a group just sort of wither away to nothingness and be forgotten. I think that because our species is the only one that we have on this planet that actually has the ability to make our presence in the universe immortal within reason, up towards the end of the universe itself. If we squandered that one thing that we got going on that the rest of the planet doesn't, I don't see why we wouldn't do that. That seems like such an irresponsible thing. That seems like if there is a point to life for humans, if there's a point to humanity, it's defying that one universal rule on Earth, which is that everything will be eventually forgotten. We don't have to. We don't have to as humans. So why do that? And so in order to make that a thing, you have to protect the kids, and you gotta help the kids. You gotta feed the kids. You gotta make the kids do a thing. You gotta teach the kids. You gotta for fuck's sake, make them run some laps every once in a while for just their little hearts, so they can keep doing it later on. Um, and I know it sounds like I'm wildly off topic right now, but really, this is actually one of the things I really want to talk about, which is that we have this society right now where this bill is even a necessity. In Canada, no questions asked. Some people being jerks about it, but most of the people in charge of Canada and the rest of the developed world all said, "You need help? Fine, take it." Now, other side of the coin is we can tell you what to do to make it safe. So Canadians, $2,000 per person per month, entire duration of the pandemic, done. We're fighting over the second part of $2,000, which is 2,000 out of 2,600 that we've gotten, or I can't remember how much the first stimulus was, to be honest, but we got less than 2 months worth of stimulus from Canada, for example. But other countries have done so many other things. Like they already have free healthcare available to people in England, and most of the EU. You can just get healthcare, even whether or not they have free nationalized healthcare or even free healthcare at all. They will treat you and then help you figure out a way out of it, out of the problems. And for COVID-19, last I checked, every state I checked, every government I checked, even Germany with its crazy system of territories said, "Don't worry about those bills. We're gonna help you with that. We don't care what, because you need to stay home. You need to stay safe. We gotta beat this thing." And that's what they did. China has its own way of handling business. It took the very strong approach of locking people into their buildings and providing them with food, which is, to be honest, more than our country's done. So if you want to criticize China, you have a foot to stand on, but it's only one, and it's not that big of a foot. As far as being an American, like you individually, people who are watching the stream, I don't believe Ted Cruz is watching the stream, and if he is, oh my God, you can go fuck yourself, and I'm willing to fight you. But the original people I know who are watching the stream, who are watching this later, you don't need to worry about the shame or whatever, blah blah blah. I know all of you did what you could for who you can, and that's the way we need to be. We need to be one team on this. And this bill is this is the social contract coming to be paid in part. The reason why you deal with the bullshit of capitalism, the reason why you deal with the bullshit of voting, the reason why you deal with the bullshit of having neighbors whose names you don't even know, is because you pay for these things to be there. You pay for a fire department, you pay for roads, you pay for schools, you pay for a government, you pay for a country, you pay for an army, you pay for all of the developments, all of the advancements of our species until then. That's why you have a house, that's why you have a car, it's why you have metal spoons, all this shit that would not exist without a collective action. The other side of that coin is that you give what you have in part to that system, and then when you yourself are lacking of a thing, depending on your form of government, that's supposed to cover you back. This is supposed to be the social contract. The social contract is you are protected, you are defended, and you are insured. And this is our best bet. This is our best effort towards that so far. And to be honest, I'm largely happy with it as it is. But I know that there are people who are like me, that when they get help from the government, for whatever reason, in whatever fashion, they're going to feel like, oh, people are going to tell you that you all are getting something for nothing. This is just handouts. None of this shit's handouts. If you didn't spend your whole life paying taxes, which a lot of you are, a lot of people do, your parents did, your grandparents did, your uncles, aunts, cousins, all this stuff. The kid you took care of, the kid you babysat down the street, he grew up, he paid taxes. You played the game, whatever setting you had it on. If it was a hard setting, you had a low score, it doesn't matter. You played the game. The other half of playing the game is, at the end of the game, we all at least get X livelihood out of it. And this relief bill is not close, not even close to what it should be. But it is something. And every single penny of this money is money that, given the austere the austere culture we have in the United States, given the complete lack of services compared to dollar for dollar, we pay tons and get nothing compared to the rest of the developed world. So every single cent of this relief goes to people who they're still being owed by the government at this point. The government owes us these things because the government itself only exists from our handouts to it. Big business only exists because of our handouts through the government. The oil companies, energy companies, Lockheed Martin, Google, Amazon. Amazon has gotten more in tax breaks in 1 year than a gigantic percentage of the population is going to get in total forever, and all benefits it ever gets from the government. I saw something, it was, if you count a person's individual portion of police, of law enforcement costs, fire costs, education costs, road maintenance, and subsidies for various programs, that total, like, the U.S. government gave you this much money, and you counted how many people it took to get to equaling one Jeff Bezos tax credit for him just being kind of rich, and they wanted him to keep doing stuff. It's like 20% of the U.S. population is basically, in their entire lifetime, going to equal one Jeff Bezos tax credit, which is nuts. So when it comes to this $1,400, y'all don't need to be worrying about whether or not the government is overpaying people, because y'all are owed. We're all owed. It's just how society works, and the fact that we live in a country where people don't understand that, where 33% of the country doesn't understand that, is nuts. Which is why it took 6 months for this bill to pass, and why it still has another day left at minimum. And the best we can get after 6 months is the president saying that he hopes to have it signed and completed by the end of the week, and it's Tuesday. The week just unstarted. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I've said everything I can say without rambling too much. And I'm going to go ahead and start addressing some of these questions I've been seeing in the chat. So I'm going to take just a second here to not try to crash my computer. There we go. And I'm going to open this thing up, put this over here. Nope. Hold on. Aha, there we go. Okay. So yeah, I'll check the questions. So I'm officially saying that the actual stream itself is officially over at this point. It's over an hour and 4 minutes, which means that plus the pre-chime that means a full hour. And if you're still on here at this point, we're just doing Q&A, and then I'm going to open up the Discord server for our chat, which I will get a fresh link in here for that. So pulling questions from YouTube first, because those are the ones that I won't have time to answer once I close the stream. Are you not an anarcho-Bidenist? I am not an anarcho-Bidenist. I don't even know how that would work. Uh, feel free to send me a message or put it in the comments of how you think an anarcho-Bidenist structure would work. Because I know you're meaning as a joke, but that's kind of a curious question. The best thing Xavier Cruz did was when he went to Mexico to bring the sun back to Texas. I mean, yeah, that's one way or the other. A reference to share. If I could turn back time, if I could find a way. So I figure out the plus $600 million is nothing. And New Gilded Age. Isn't balancing the budget a myth when we just print more money? Well, I mean, balancing the budget's a myth because you can't actually balance a budget without incurring the penalty of inherent inflation, which comes even in periods short as a single year. So you can try to balance the budget, but all you end up doing is having to cut corners later anyways, unless... Okay, so a lot of government contracts work a year in advance to lock in the cost so they can write a budget. But they've actually shown that balancing a budget does nothing but stifle growth and prevent a government from being able to react to things like disasters and things like that, because you can't just, for some reason, and I don't understand why, but building a large bank account for just when disasters happen isn't a thing that the government is terribly excited about doing. So when it comes to balancing the budget, I know you're asking probably in reference to some things I've been seeing too, which is that people saying that we're creating fake money by creating these money directly into people's bank accounts. The thing to keep in mind is that most money is just numbers of people's bank accounts. It is still being recorded. It still exists somewhere, so it's no more fake than any of the other ones and zeros and other places, because it's still being recorded. Now, if someone were to go to like break into all the servers that hold all the financial information for that and to delete all that, that would be making money out of nothing. That would be a problem. Whether or not it's a problem that's outweighed by its benefits, I'll never know. Da, 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 da. Oh, okay. So there's a discussion after this I didn't read through. They talk about that more. Okay, so Willow Gaming asks, how do you feel about a person like them making these payments? The pandemic absolutely did not hurt me financially. Well, Willow Gaming, I know you personally. I know your income bracket, and I still say that you pay enough into taxes that the benefits you're getting back from society and from the government in particular are still nowhere close to what they would be if you lived in any other developed country. The fact is that you paying as much tax as you are now in Mexico, you'd be getting free health care, you get a free pension that covers up the majority of your expenses as an old person living on your own. But being in Mexico, you'd have a family inherently because that's the way it works down there. I mean, Mexico is like the lowest example of developed nation I could think of right now because of the way their government is working / percent parentheses not actually working. But like even in Mexico, you're getting more for your money than you are here, which is nuts. The one thing you do have that other countries don't have is that you live in the one most invincible country on the planet that you never have to worry about ever getting invaded by like Canada or something. Now you live in the modern world where nobody has to really worry about that. So it's like paying for tiger insurance. So I say, my thing is all Americans, all U.S. citizens, $2,000 per person per month, pandemic plus 6 months to a year. That's what we should be doing. Economists of every stripe at least have some people in their stripe that agree with me. Some have even said more. Some people said up to $5,000 to be completely safe. You don't have to worry about anything because most of it's coming directly back in the form of taxes. And I explained that on an earlier stream. I can get into that later about how you really can't overpay people with stimulus money because it just doesn't ever stay out in the world. It comes right back in. So yeah, everybody. I don't even care. Bill Gates could get his check. I don't give a shit. I think everyone should get it. Now, that doesn't mean they have to keep it. That doesn't mean they can't just donate to some sort of charity. In fact, a lot of them will because they get tax free or whatever. tax breaks and stuff. But I got in a position where, because I don't live a terribly luxurious lifestyle, when I got my disability payments from the military, from the DVA, it coincided half with my time with the stimulus payments and stuff, like halfway through things. So I've actually been able to use the money from the stimulus to keep our budget in check, but also been able to then use money I have in the bank account for helping my neighbors and my friends and paying for things like that, which is exactly what we're supposed to do. So yeah, so Will Gaming is mentioning in the comments that John Oliver, also a lot of people have mentioned that $1 in benefits yields $2 into the economy. And that's exactly what I'm saying, and that's exactly what I've said before in the past, is that because of the number of times a dollar changes hands between you and the government, it's going to create more in taxes for transactions until it hits either a savings account, or B, a rich person's stock bonds trading, blah 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 blah. In which case, it tends to go in crazy places, usually offshore. But even then, statistic is still pretty handily. It goes, economic velocity. Yep. It still goes back to helping out. But anyway, so my point is that when people have a little bit of extra, not only do they pay their bills, I pay my bills now on time every time. I have everything on auto pay, which is something I couldn't do before, which streamlines business. It makes the economy more stable. It makes growth more possible because I no longer have to. I'm now one of a bunch of people who, with working with other businesses now, they can count on that exchange happening on a regular time. They can plan ahead. They can move forward. I can plan ahead. I can move forward. So now that I'm more stable, I can help stabilize my friends. And then they can keep that going, and we can actually get growth. We can maintain growth. We can maintain stability together, and that's what relief does. Is it takes this, it makes it into this, which is just in every way better in terms of economies. Next question I have is okay. So referencing back to the different types of Democrats. They're suggesting the use of Dino, which is Democrat in name only. I actually think that Dino Rhino, the Ben Shapiro trademark Gino, who, by the way, if you weren't here on an earlier stream, I officially kicked Ben Shapiro out of Judaism. He's no longer Jewish. I say so, and he can talk to me if he wants it back. But I'm going to be holding it. I have it right here. This is Ben Shapiro's Judaism. I've been keeping it right here on my desk. He can come claim whatever he wants. But I don't like that in name only, because the party is what the party makes itself. So the Democrats are a party that consists of conservatives, moderates, and progressives, and unfortunately about equal numbers. Although the progressives, half of them are closeted, and the conservatives, half of them are closeted, and they're both pretending to be moderates. So, I don't think Dino is a good idea for the new word to replace blue dog. I'm still trying to work out what comes, kind of animals between an elephant and a donkey. And I just they're the rhinoceros, but then that's already that people just call that a rhino and think I'm talking about Republicans. But and the other question that Beardemus has is that since ACAB is such a divisive phrase, would CAC, cops are cringe, be a better alternative? You know what? I like that. I'm going to keep that one. I'm going to use that one. Cops are cringe is pretty accurate. That being said, all cops are bastards. I don't suppose anybody watching the stream doesn't understand that, but just in case somebody in the future nabs it up, the whole point is that the phrase "it's just a few bad apples" forgets the other half of the phrase that rots the whole batch, and that's bad. So if there are bad apples, that are known by the other apples, and they're left to be there, all they've done is created more bad apples directly touching the bad apples that already exist, making all apples in the batch potentially bad apples. And by not removing them, you take on the responsibility of that action that they are committing. So all cops that do not actively seek out, investigate, and remove, punish, reform bad cops are in fact personally responsible for the actions of all the other cops. And I'll put the caveat asterisk in saying that I think all cops are bastards should be broken up into um, regions of responsibility. So, like, all of my local cops are bastards because I know there's bad cops in my hometown, and they have been outed and cleared before. There's nothing stopping them from being jerks. A lot of their behavior is typical of what people talk about for cops doing bullshit. I talked to one recently that suggested that it's a good idea to teach kids how to murder school shootings. And when I directly asked those that if that's preferable to enacting legislation or policies that would reduce school shootings, he said, "You can't do that. So this is the next best thing, which is teaching kids to murder people with cans of soup." I disagree with that because of facts that exist in the universe that say that that's not the better way of handling business. But that was one of the nicest cops we have in town. So I will say that all of my local cops are bastards because people like that are allowed to continue doing their job. Will Gaming reiterating what I'm saying. And I have no further questions for this Q&A, it looks like. Let me just double check some of the other parts of the places for the stream. Oh yeah, I was talking about my shirt. So I'm gonna talk about my shirt, and then I'm gonna close the stream unless I get more questions. So this shirt is one of my favorite shirts. It comes across as brown from pretty much every distance beyond like a foot and a half. But my favorite thing about the shirt is that there's no brown in it at all. It is in fact, it is a kind of weird plaid thing, which is red and green, and there is a brownish green, and there is a tan and a beige and a blue and a light blue and a turquoise. There's all kinds of colors in this bad boy, but it suits my kind of dirt socialist beliefs in having earth tone colored looking things, but at the same time, it is itself at the micro level very garish and colorful. I wonder if I can get it to focus enough on the actual colors. Yeah, that's close enough. You can kind of see that. And I picked the shirt out of my closet and thinking, wow, that shirt is going to get eaten by the camera. The camera's going to hate that shirt. But I am curious what it's going to do to the camera. So I put it on anyways. I'm not going to make this my stream shirt because, man, that'd be great if I could. Mostly because I'm still too fat to wear it the way I like to wear it. But I'm working on that. That's one of my things I'm working on. So the shirt will continue to make appearances unless I hear public outcry saying that it has been just too awful to look at or to have in their peripheral vision. Or if you're just listening to the stream rather than watching the stream, knowing of its existence has bothered you so much that hearing me talk while wearing it has bothered you enough, I will think about not wearing the shirt. But other than that, it's going to stay. Okay, so that all being said, I haven't received any additional questions about things. Oh, no, I did have a question. I said I was going to answer. Beardamus asked earlier today in our Discord group about the. Oh yeah, Will Gaming talking about my shirt says it play havoc with backward removing software. Hey, Rocket, that's my tea. Thank you very much. Yeah, no, I'm cool with that. I like fucking with electronics. Shows them what for. All right, so the question that Beerm has asked, the cat was going for my teacup, and her whole head was in it. Good news, there isn't really any tea in it. There's a little bit of a little bit left, but she'll be fine. All of you get to share in that experience because I'm an unprofessional streamer. So Beer Mist asked the question if we were going to be covering the Dr. Seuss drama. And I'm going to go ahead and roll this into the Dr. Seuss and Mr. Potato Head drama. You guys are going to get a two for one drama explosive expose here on Laura Mipsum. Oh no, Squid's not here. We get to listen to Logus talk for an hour now. What did we do wrong? Where did we go wrong as a society? Edition TM. And the answer to that is that clearly the I never heard of the 6 books that the company that owns it are holding back. I don't think I'm going to ever look at those 6 books. I had no plans of doing it. I like Dr. Seuss. If you're around, please put in the comments your favorite Dr. Seuss book if you have one. My favorite one is A Walk It in My Pocket. It is the only hardback Dr. Seuss book I owned for a long period of time that didn't creep me the fuck out and also scared the shit out of me at times because there's some genuinely creepy pictures in it. But that's Dr. Seuss. That's the what you get when you go to Dr. Seuss, and the rhyming schemes and the names of the creatures in Walk It in My Pocket. There's A Walk It in My Pocket are just great. But the company that owns the people who own the property decided they're going to cut some of their own product out because they find it distressing, and they feel that in society that's enough. And I don't necessarily believe in a fully free market, but I believe in a free market enough to say that if you want to edit your own material to make it more friendly to a larger audience, fine. That's a freedom you get. I saw a thing from Twitter where the guy saying that when they made the Lorax movie which has an inherently environmentalist message, conservatives were over their knees complaining about that shit. That how dare we use question mark * TM talk about the Lorax and try to make this political parentheses. The Dr. Seuss has always been political. Well, with chosen works. I'm about to get a long distance correction from my spouse, the English major. Wait one, or hang tight, I guess. A Storm of Swords. That's a Dr. Seuss book. I gotta find that. That's a sweet fucking name for a book. A Storm of Swords. If I wasn't told it was Dr. Seuss, I would totally guess that was made by some red pill man's right activist guy. Oh, okay. Dr. Seuss is always extremely. Yeah, no, but like there are some books that Dr. Seuss wrote that aren't political by themselves. Like there's a walk in my pocket. There's no political message behind it. There's a walk in my pocket other than don't look under the stairs, motherfuckers. That's the only political message in that one, and that's a good message for people. I think people of color have taken that one to heart every time. Oh, okay. So it's not a Dr. Seuss book. It's it's in fact a Game of Thrones book, which I don't know because I don't engage in Game of Thrones either. So, anyways, so coming about the political nature of the Lorax, and then being like, "Oh, how dare they besmirch 6 books that none of us have ever fucking read?" When they were removing some of the racist elements from the books or not publishing the books anymore. Period. So that's a complete non-issue. We're back to the way things were back in 2006, where they literally 2006, not 2006. In the 6th year of the Obama presidency, where they're just running out of shit to complain about. but the Biden presidency has just started, and it's been largely decent. Like for instance, I didn't realize a couple days ago that it had been 2 months since the insurrection. That seems like it just happened. It feels like the inauguration just happened. Whereas last year, 2 months in, I was wondering if I had my taxes done in time for 2021 yet. Like, it's been crazy. A huge difference this year to last. But anyway, they're just coming up with something to complain about because that's what they are. And the Mr. Potato Head thing is exactly the same. Um, there was a thing I saw about that where someone else was saying that it was that idiot fucking Dave Rubin complaining about Mr. Potato Head, and he basically says straight up that it's already gender neutral with an arbitrary name put on the front, and how dare they remove the arbitrary name. So it's already like the most gender neutral dressing game doll toy ever made. And how dare they remove the Mr. Mrs. But they're not even doing that. They're just putting it in small type down at the bottom of the box. They're just, the main product itself is Potato Head. Now, I think last I heard they were thinking about completely undoing that whole thing because of all the hubbub. But I think if they do, well, first off, people shouldn't be buying Mr. Potato Head, period, because it's a trash toy. But like, and I'm not going to buy one, so I can't exactly threaten them with my economic power. But I don't think anyone should care. And if they do change it one way or the other, I don't think people should change how they're going to buy or not buy Mr. Potato Heads. And definitely don't break them, because if you've ever seen the plastic they make those things out of, it is not environmentally friendly. So don't destroy them, don't throw them away. Just keep doing what you're doing with your Mr. Potato Heads, which is buy them, get bored of them in 5 minutes, and then put them away. Or donate them to like Goodwill, or where they can join the rest of the army of Mr. Potato Heads that'll never ever end up anywhere besides the dump or somewhere else like a school. That's where Mr. Potato Head works, because you have a bunch of kids coming in, they're half asleep, they really just want a Pop-Tart, and for you to shut the fuck up so they can go back to sleeping because they don't want to be to school yet. But there they are. Mr. Potato Head is good for that, because after they're bored with it in 6 seconds, a different kid can play with it, and by some time later in the school year, that same kid, because he wasn't fully awake the first time he saw Mr. Potato Head, will get curious again because he's a kid. And he'll play with it again, and after 6 minutes, be like, yeah, that was great, now I'm bored. And so it works in schools. It works in before school and after school care. But that's really about it. It's not a full-time toy. It's like Nutella. Nutella's not an everyday, every week food. Nutella is definitely I could go for some Nutella, and then you get your Nutella, and you call it good. And you're like, yeah, that was really good, but I do want to feel the surface of my tongue at some point in the near future. Okay. So I think I've at this point answered Mr. Potato Head, Dr. Seuss, conservatives, parentheses, regressives, no idea what they're talking about, and they're wrong regardless. And they are children for complaining about it. That's my fact-based opinion. Well, the first part's fact. That they're wrong is also fact, and that they're children, that's an opinion. I'll admit to that. That's me being opinionated. That's my editorial. That I expect more from adults than to act like that. Okay. Well, it's been an hour and a half. More of you than I expected hung in for that. So I'm going to hand off a link right now in the chat, if I can make this work. That'll take people to join us here on Discord for the after stream chat. Could someone just drop in a note, let me know whether or not that actually worked before I sign off here, just because I want to. If someone could just drop in a really quick thing saying whether or not that link actually works, that'd be great. before I sign off here from YouTube, because once again, not technologically advanced anymore. This guy. So, any confirmation whatsoever, or anything. Okay, thank you. Excellent. Okay, I very much thank you all, Willow Gaming, Beardimus Prime, Music Maker. Thank you all very much for confirming that it works. And at this point, I'm going to say thank you guys for showing up. I hope to see you soon in the off-air chat. And I hope Squid gets better and he come back and tells you all what I did wrong. Be safe, have a great night, and see you guys next week. End stream.